Hey guys, Raj Sanger of Car Security. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another episode of Raj's Garage. Today we'll be focusing on my 964 Turbo. Now this car's already been featured on the channel before, but I've never done a complete overview of this car, showing the reasons why I bought this car, the stages that it's been through and where we are today. So guys, sit back, chill, and hopefully you'll enjoy this episode. So why a 964 Turbo? Well, guys, that iconic film, Bad Boys, Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, the scenes in there, you can't forget those scenes, and I'm sure a lot of you guys understand why I lusted after a 964 Turbo. I started looking for a 964 3.6 Turbo around 2018, 2019, and actually saw a couple of 3.6 Turbos, couldn't get a deal done. This particular car popped up at Ashgood Porsche in January 2020. It's a 3.3 turbo. Needed some work, we'll go into that shortly, but the car was attractively priced because it needed the work. Before I parted with all my cash, I actually had a pre-purchase inspection done by a company called Porsche Inspections, and they gave me a 15-page report on the car. The car actually came with 2 folders worth of invoices relating to all the service history, all the works that have been done on the car, all the engine modifications. We'll go into that shortly. So based on the PPI report, knowing what I needed to do to the car and a rough idea of cost, I bought the car. You guys are probably thinking, what work needed to be done to this car? It looks stunning. Well, I didn't buy it like this. It needed a complete repaint. The front end was just shot, peppered with stone chips. Previous owners have used the car as maybe a track tool and definitely gone to Europe, the Alps and so on, and there's a lot of photographic evidence that actually came with the service history to indicate that they've been used as intended. So they needed a complete respray. The engine had a few oil leaks and there was a little ticking noise coming from the engine. Nothing major, but I knew there were some issues. So this is actually a 3.3 turbo. Externally, it looks identical to a 3.6 turbo, which is the car that was used in Bad Boys. Now, let's go over the differences between a standard 3.3 turbo and a standard 3.6 turbo. So, 3.3 turbo uses the engine out of the older 930 turbo, slightly modified, pushes out about 320 brake as a stock engine. It's good for 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds and about 170 miles an hour. The 3.6 turbo, which was manufactured in 1993-94, although this is a 93 car, in 93-94 they actually made a 3.6 turbo. Pushed out about 360 brake, 0 to 60 in about 4.1, 4.2 seconds, and good for 180 miles an hour. That's the difference on the engine. Now in terms of build numbers, about 3,500 3.3 turbos were manufactured worldwide, but only 130 right-hand drive UK models were manufactured. So it's a fairly exclusive club. It's as exclusive as a 3.6 UK right-hand drive, but because it's a 3.6 and Bad Boys, it's a little bit more iconic and the price differences are substantial. Now, a 3.6 turbo, when I was looking for a 3.6 turbo, they're around 200K. I got this car for less than half of that, albeit it needed some work. Now, is it half the car? No way. It's probably more or less the same as a 3.6 turbo, but we'll go into that shortly. Externally, there are a few differences between a 3.3 turbo and a 3.6 turbo. Firstly, the wheels. Now, a 3.3 turbo comes with cup wheels. The 3.6 comes with speed lines, which this has. These have been refurbished by Voodoo Motorsport, did a fantastic job last year. Also, the 3.6 turbo comes with better brakes, a bit more power. They call them big reds, which are the same brakes that you get on the 993 turbo. Well, this has got big reds, so again, upgraded. There's one other subtle difference between a 3.6 and a 3.3 turbo. The 3.6s say turbo 3.6. Well, this is not a 3.6. These come with a turbo badge, and I've kept it simple, and I've just left that badge in place. And let's talk about some of the modifications that have been done to my 3.3 turbo. Now, pick up this heavy tailgate. Here you have the intercooler, which sits underneath the massive whale tail. Underneath that, you have a upgraded turbo and you have an upgraded wastegate. 8,000 miles ago, this car had a complete top-end engine rebuild. So you're talking new piston rings, a gasket set, valve guides, head studs, tinware, and so on. Those of you that have air-cooled Porsches will know exactly what I'm talking about. Also during its life, it's had Powerflex bushes, it's had a braided hose kit, and an aftermarket air filter. Also, we have a CarGraphic exhaust system here. The cats have been replaced by a bypass pipe, and the boost actually comes in about 500 RPM lower down the rev range, and we'll experience that when we go out for a drive. So all in all, quite a few engine upgrades and exhaust upgrades have been done by the previous owners. So where are we today, guys? Well, we're at Northway Porsche, and why are we here? Well, they look after this car. They look after my 993 Turbo, they look after my 997 GT3, and they even look after my 964 C2. And these were the guys that sorted out the engine running issues that I mentioned earlier on. The last year, Northway Porsche replaced the cylinder head, loads of gaskets, exhaust studs, other bits and pieces of standard sort of routine maintenance work, gave the car a service, and now it's running sweet and smooth. So guys, if you've got a Porsche and it needs servicing or maintenance or just upkeep, give the guys here at Northway Porsche a call. They'll look after you, independent specialist, and their pricing is spot on. The guys here at Northway Porsche have actually driven the car. In fact, Paul's taken it for a test drive once they did the maintenance work last year. And he actually feels with all the upgraded bits and pieces, you know, mechanically, engine-wise and so on, it drives as good as, if not better than a 3.6 turbo. So I've managed to get myself, in effect, a 3.6 turbo for half the price of a 3.6 turbo. Now recently, this car was pitted against 6 other generations of 911 turbo on a CarWow episode. So we took my car, we took my 993 turbo, there's a 930 turbo, everything all the way up to a 992 turbo S. Now the new cars are obviously stupidly quick. You know, a 992 turbo S has double the power of a 3.3 turbo. But this car held its own. I was quite pleasantly surprised that, okay, it didn't keep up with the 993 turbo, but it wasn't far off. But it absolutely destroyed the 930 turbo. And considering this engine's based on the 930 3.3 turbo, I'd probably agree with the guys here at Northway Porsche that it is a pretty quick car. Externally, this car's had a complete repaint. So let's talk about what I've done to this car and who's repainted this car. It's had a complete bare metal repaint by Greg Howell of Southam Bodies. He's painted numerous cars for me, including my 964 C2 and my 993 Turbo. Here on this particular car, we've got a new front bumper, a new rear bumper, both the front wings, again brand new, the front lights, wiper blades, all the rubber gaskets have been replaced, the seals, the door shuts, the sunroof seals, and the side skirts. It's had loads of rust sorted, loads of welding had to be done, and it's now painted in this sort of deep non-metallic black. I've got to say the car does look amazing. Wherever I go, I get a thumbs up, people are staring at it, you know, petrol station, people want to talk to you. It is so iconic. It's not like you see these cars on the road every day. There are, I believe, 6 episodes covering the whole restoration process on the channel. Now, if you've got a 964 or a 993 or any air-cooled Porsche and you want to repaint the car, I would suggest you sit down and you watch those episodes because it gives you an insight into all the stuff you will find that you can't see. Now, you might have a little bit of surface rust, as this car had, but when you start peeling that back and you start taking wings apart, there's always hidden nasties. So you need to be prepared for that. So I would suggest there'll be a link at the end of this episode. Watch that playlist. Now, to protect the front end, I've had PPF done by GVE in Uxbridge, and they've protected the front end for me. And in our recent CarWow episode that we shot, Thank God for that, because the car was being peppered with stones on this particular airfield that we were filming on. If you want to find out what it costs when you go bare metal, repaint all the bits and pieces that you need to buy, at the end of the playlist, there is an indication of what it cost me to get it looking like this. Right guys, that's enough of me waffling on. I think we need to get in the car, go for a drive. You know, you'll get to feel that turbo lag, and you'll also feel that turbo boost and all the theatre and drama surrounding the turbo in this car. So you know what, let's go. Right guys, inside the car, and as with all classic air-cooled Porsches, it's a very small and tight cabin. I lean over, I can touch the passenger side door card. Also, you sit slightly skew with. The pedals are offset to the center because the oil cooler sits inside the right-hand side wing, and that's the same for all air-cooled Porsches. If you've not sat in an air-cooled Porsche before and you jump in to drive it, it is a little bit weird, but once you've driven a few, you get used to it very, very quickly. Now, I didn't talk about suspension setup externally because there's really nothing to see, but you could see the car was sitting fairly low, and it's lower than stock ride height for a 964 turbo. This is sitting on Bilstein PSS 10s. They were purchased by one of the previous owners. It's quite harsh. The suspension isn't very forgiving. You do feel every stone, every bump, every camber adjustment in the road. But I suppose it goes with the territory of the car. It's an old car, it's a classic car. It's got those aggressive looks, and having the suspension set up the way it is now to sit a little bit lower, that aggressive stance, I think it works quite well. Before I get into the driving of the car, let's talk about audio and security. Now, I've upgraded the audio in this. I've got the Blaupin SQR46 DAB, which is the must-have unit for cars from the sort of late 80s and 90s era. It fits the dashboard ergonomically exceptionally well. You've got DAB, USB, Bluetooth streaming, and so on. Looks perfect. In the front, you normally have 13 centimeter components in 964s. Because I've got these RS style door cards, we were able to fabricate some doorbells and upgrade the speakers to 6.5 inch, 16.5 centimeter, just to give me a bit more depth. In the back, on the 964s and on the 993s, you have 4x6s on the back shelf. In this case, this car, the rear shelf's been retrimmed previously, and somebody's fitted some Kenwood components in the rear cards, and I've left those there. There's also a Rockford PS8 8-inch active woofer in the passenger footwell. You wouldn't even know it's there, it's hidden away, and that adds some nice bass depth to the music. And I like listening to R&B and hip hop, soul, and that really does help sort of bring that low, okay, we're not talking sub bass, but you know, good quality bass into the cabin. Now, security guys, I have upgraded the security on this car. You know, I hear so many stories from people that haven't even got an alarm, let alone a tracker on their car. You know, the value of these cars now, they're so easy to steal. You need to upgrade that security. I've got a smart track tracking system on this car, and I've also got a Clifford Concept 650 Thatcham approved alarm system, which does a central locking. It's got an immobilizer built in as well. Guys, you really need to look at the security of your classic cars. We're based in Hayes, and if you're obviously living, you know, 200-300 miles away, I don't expect you to drive to have an alarm fitted by us. You could do, but I don't think it's something you want to do. If you go to the clifford.co.uk website, there'll be a link below at the end of this episode. Find a local dealer to you. Clifford Alarms, the best alarms, been going for 40, 50 years, the best alarms for these classic cars. Dash layout, in keeping from this era, you've got 5 clocks sitting directly behind this beautiful Porsche RS steering wheel, nice chunky steering wheel. In my 964 C2 and in my 993 Turbo, I've got a Momo Prototipo, which is a little bit thinner. I think this chunkier steering wheel goes with the aggressive, chunky look of this car. On the right hand side, where normally the clock would sit, I've got this boost gauge, which also doubles up as a voltage gauge, which is pretty cool. There's also a sunroof in this car, and the button to operate the sunroof sits in an unusual place, just underneath the dials here, and that toggle switch allows you to open and close the sunroof. Although the car has got AC, and that AC does work pretty well. It does blow nice cold air. So that's the interior dash and layout done. Seating wise, got these lovely comfortable sports seats. They're electronically adjustable, very comfortable, and you know, I can drive this car for 2-3 hours, as I have done, get out, and I feel perfectly fine. The car does have power steering. It's got a 5-speed gearbox. Clutch is extremely heavy, totally different to the 993 Turbo. 6-speed gearbox, very light clutch, easier car to drive. You know, this car is very, very, very aggressive in its setup and its power delivery. And in fact, let me show you that. So the boost kicks in around just below 3,000 revs. I can hear it in the background, and then as you put your foot down, it'll carry on going all up to 6,500 revs, and it is crazy. You ready for some boost? See what I mean? And brakes, absolutely brilliant. Although I do think there is an issue with my ABS, which was pointed out to me by Matt Watson when he was driving my car on CarWow recently.
I'm not so sure that the ABS is working in its fullest capacity.
Now, are you ready for some more boost? Wow. Thing is just so aggressive, so brutal in its power delivery. You can feel it's a slow, heavy car, but at 3,000 RPM, the car just comes alive. It throws you back into the seat. Feedback from the steering wheel is fantastic. Boy, you have to have your wits about you, because if you try and do that in the wet, you will lose it. You have to give this car some respect. It commands respect. If you go up to 6,000 revs and go to change gear, it's still in boost. And when you go into the next gear, it just carries on launching you. And no doubt, I've never done it, no doubt in every gear you can go bang, 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 and you could quite easily hit that 170 mile an hour speed limit. The car does sound like a jet fighter when it's on boost. It is absolutely crazy. There is nothing out there now that you can buy that will give you this level of enjoyment and fun factor. Impossible. Yes, the value of this car is probably the same as a 991 Turbo S, and that's a quick car. It's a stupidly quick car, but will it give you the same fun factor that this car has? This car's very analog. You know, 991 Turbo S, it's very digital. You know, the car's driving you. You are driving this car. You need to be careful, but at the same time, when you want to give it some, you can hear it. It just goes crazy. I think the way to describe the power delivery is brutal, because that's what it is. At some point, we will get this car on a rolling road, along with my 993 Turbo, and see what the difference is on paper between those two cars. For the time being, I'm just going to wait for another gap in the road. I can hear the car boosting up in the background. We're at 3,000 RPM, and just go for it. love it. Absolutely love this car. Right guys, that's the end of this episode. You can see why I've got a grin on my face driving this car. You know, turbo boost, car goes crazy, absolutely love it. Every time I drive this car, I walk out of the car with a smile on my face. Now, obviously any questions you have, any comments you have, drop them down below. Is the 964 Turbo as iconic for you as it is for me? Let me know, what do you think? Now, this is probably the best car in my fleet. That's until I jump into my 993 Turbo, and then that becomes the best car in my fleet. It's probably a keeper. However, if I can get a 964 3.6 Turbo, I'd probably sell it. Now the chances of that happening pretty remote because there's none for sale at the moment and the prices on those are skyrocketing. But anyway guys, thanks for watching. As I said earlier, any comments, any questions you have, drop them down below. Like this video, that's very, very important. Smash that like button now. You know, we want to bring you much more content, and the more you like, the more other viewers get an opportunity to see what we're doing. Subscribe to the channel, the more we can deliver. Subscribe, obviously, if you've not already subscribed, and share with your friends. And I'll be back pretty soon on another episode of Raj's Garage.